Wicked actress Cynthia Erivo recently whined about how difficult her life is because people are rejecting the evil of gender ideology and disordered lifestyles. And guess where she did the whining at? That's right, she did it at a Hollywood Awards ceremony. The GLAAD Awards, specifically, an award ceremony that should not exist. In a sane society, there would not be an awards ceremony celebrating the evil of gender ideology and disordered lifestyles because it goes against the common good and is leading people down paths of destruction, providing a bad example to them. But that is where Cynthia Erivo decided to whine about how difficult her life is. So she did this while receiving an award at the GLAAD Awards, and she said, "I have spoken about being your whole self and your true self. I speak about the prizes that come from being you against the odds, but rarely do I acknowledge how hard that can be." So first off, this woman is already lying through her teeth, because when she's saying she's speaking about your whole self and your true self, she's not. That is not what she's talking about. She's talking about living lives of sin, living disordered lifestyles, living in, as I said, living in sin, engaging in homosexual acts, living, pretending that you're living the opposite sex when you are not. If you're a man, you're pretending you're living as a woman, or if you're a woman, you're living as a man. That is what she is saying. That is not your whole self. That is not your true self. Those are lies. If you're living that way, you are living a lie. You are living against what God has planned for you. And what God has planned for you is your whole self and true self. And you should be living the way that God wants you to live. And that is in accord with his laws and his teachings. So Cynthia Erivo, straight out the bat, lying in her speech. Nevertheless, she went on and said, "So I thought that I would make some room for those of us who are trying to find the courage to exist as we want." So there you go. She actually admits that she is lying. It's not living your whole self. It's not living your true self. It's living the way we want, right? So there you go. She's already admitting that she's a liar, because I think this is the space to do that. And then she says, "It isn't easy. None of it is. Waking up and choosing to be yourself, proclaiming a space belongs to you when you don't feel welcomed, teaching people on a daily basis how to address you, and dealing with the frustration of reteaching people a word that has been in the human vocabulary since the dawn of time, they, them." So she's literally talking about gender ideology here. She's literally talking about convincing people to buy into your lie that you are somehow not a woman. That is what she's saying here is so difficult. It's very difficult to convince people of her lie. That is why life is so hard for her. I mean, this is what this woman is actually saying at this award ceremony. You cannot make this stuff up. Nevertheless, she goes on and says, "Words used to describe pedantically two or more people, poetically a person who is simply more." I mean, what? A person who is simply more. No, you are pushing gender ideology. You are pushing the lie that men can become women and women can become men. You are pushing the lie that there are more than two sexes as God created. That is what you are doing. The nerve of these people, the nerve. And I think these people know, I think she knows what she's doing. I think she knows exactly what she is doing. And she's already kind of exposed herself as being someone who is knowingly lying to people. Anyway, she goes on and says, "It isn't easy to ask people to treat you with dignity since you should just have it as a given." I actually agree with that. That is 100% true. We are all made in the image and likeness of God. And so we all should be treated with dignity that way, because we all have inherent dignity, because we are made in the image and likeness of God. Nevertheless, she goes on and says, "It isn't easy to learn to grow who you are if the world around you is knocking at your door, telling you to stay inside." That's not really what happens. Not in today's world, not in the West. In the West, it is all about pushing these disordered lifestyles. It is all about buying into the lie of gender ideology. We see this everywhere. I mean, it took President Donald Trump to issue an executive order to have federal buildings stop flying the rainbow LGBTQ plus flag that was promoting this stuff. We've seen numerous government grants going out to various NGOs and foreign countries to promote all of this stuff. So that is not what is happening in the world. If that was happening in the world would be a lot better place because people would not be living these disordered, degenerate lifestyles. They would not be engaging in these sins that not only affects them, but it affects the people around them. And we see how often they push this stuff in television, in movies, etc., programming people to think that this stuff is normal. I did a video about former FBI counterterrorist expert Tim Clemente talking about how high school teenagers think that 40 to 50% of the population is LGBTQ plus because that's how many people they see in all of these Hollywood TV shows and movies and video games and then on social media as well. So that it's not just an individual lie. Like the lie spreads and is infecting our entire society and bringing it down. There is no such thing as private sin. It affects the people around you, it affects yourself, and then it affects society at large. And we see that. We are seeing the fruits of that around us. So it would be better if what she's saying actually was happening, and it's not happening. But we can work to change that. We can work to change that. She goes on and says, some flowers bloom against all the odds, like the peony, but most flowers need to be tended to and cared for before they brave the light and open up their petals to the sun. Now, I actually agree with what she's saying here. I'm not agreeing with what she is implying by that. I do think that we have a duty to properly educate our children. That is one of the things that I definitely weighs on me as a father of two, soon to be father of three, and making sure that my children are properly prepared to combat the world that they're going to face. And I think it's going to be a lot worse than what it is now. And so they have to be able to withstand all of the assaults that are going to come their way from people like Cynthia Erivo that are going to try to convince them to live these degenerate lifestyles, to engage in these sinful actions, to buy into these lies. And the best way to do that is to ensure that they know and understand the gospel and the truth that is Jesus Christ. And so we have to tend and care for our fellow man, whether that be our own children, whether that be our friends, whether that be people that we are just talking to on social media, here on YouTube. To love someone is to will the good of them. And so that is what love is. It is to will the good of another. So that is, I do agree with her that you need to tend, you need to care for them because that shows love. But what Cynthia Erivo is talking about is not love, because she's obviously wanting to indoctrinate people into these disordered lifestyles, into these sinful acts. And that is not good. That is bad. That is objectively bad. So that is what Cynthia Erivo is doing in her GLAAD speech. Now, that's not all of her speech. She goes on and thanks people, as they always do. But that was the gist of her whining about how hard her life is while she's accepting a speech at the GLAAD Awards. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up. Oh, my life is so difficult that I'm able to accept a speech at the GLAAD Awards that promotes my disordered lifestyle and promotes evil gender ideology, etc. So obviously, I include in the article here that we should not be using gender-affirming terms or pronouns. This is from Bishop Michael Burbidge, because they convey approval of or reinforce the person's rejection of the truth. It's a lie, right? It is not harsh or judgmental to decline to use such language. In no circumstances should anyone be compelled to use language contrary to the truth. The right to speak the truth inheres in the human person and cannot be taken away by any human institution. And then I also cite St. Augustine here from the Confessions, talking about how these disordered lifestyles are bad and they lead to damnation. And St. Augustine says, therefore, those offenses which be contrary to nature are everywhere and at all times to be held in detestation and punished. Such were those of the Sodomites, which should all nations commit. They should all be held guilty of the same crime by the divine law, which has not so made men that they should in that way abuse one another. For even that fellowship which should be between God and us is violated, when that same nature of which he is author is polluted by the perversity of lust. And then obviously I like to cite Bishop Fulton Sheen, so I did that as well. And Erivo's speech is exactly what Bishop Fulton Sheen says about false compassion. And he explains false compassion, which is gradually growing in this country. And he was saying this back in the 60s. So imagine how much it has grown in the 60 years since then. It's grown increasingly larger. We literally have people sympathizing for rioters now. I mean, it's insane. People are sympathizing for an assassin. Like, that is where we've gotten to, right? I mean, it's just really, really, really bad. But he says false compassion, which is gradually growing in this country, is a pity that is shown not to the mugged, but to the mugger, not to the family of the murdered, but to the murderer, not to the woman who is raped, but to the rapist, not to the poor girl who is given a shot of dope, but to the rich boy who happens to come from a fine family. There are some judges, some in some of our courts. There are some social workers, not all. There are sob sisters. There are the social slobberers who insist on compassion being shown to the muggers, to the dope fiends, to the throat slashers, to the beatniks, to the prostitutes, to the homosexuals, to the punks, so that today the decent man is practically off the reservation. This is a false compassion, and that is exactly what is happening with Cynthia Erivo here. She is literally being glorified on the GLAAD Awards and saying, woe is me that my life of sin and degeneracy is so hard. You should take compassion on me. No, we should not. We should call her to repent. We should call her to convert, and we should call her to condemn these things that she is glorifying that are evil and wrong. That is what we should be doing. So let me know what you guys make of what Cynthia Erivo had to say here during the GLAAD Awards. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, especially to each other, and to always, always speak the truth.